Welcome back to another class on the laws of cooking on Shabbat. This will be part 2 of the shiur. In part 1 of the shiur, we started speaking about that if a person went ahead and he cooked on Shabbat the food by accident versus if he cooked the food by purpose. We did explain that if a person went ahead and he cooked the food by accident, nobody's allowed to benefit from the food on Shabbat. But after Shabbat, everybody's allowed to benefit, even the one who desecrated the Shabbat. Meaning the one who went ahead and he cooked that food on Shabbat by accident. However, when it comes to cooking the food on Shabbat by purpose, there is a difference. On Shabbat, nobody's allowed to benefit from that food. After Shabbat, we're going to tell you everybody else is allowed to benefit from that food. However, the one who desecrated the Shabbat, meaning the one who cooked the food on Shabbat by purpose, that person is never allowed to eat that food forever and ever. We are continuing from there. In a situation where it is permissible for one to eat the food after Shabbat, yesh lahakel le'chlo afilu miyad la'achar tzet Shabbat. One can be lenient and eat that food which was cooked on Shabbat even immediately after Shabbat came out. Now this halacha needs to be explained. When Rav David Yosef Shlita is telling us over here, "B'makom shimutar lechol et atav shel achar Shabbat," you can be lenient to go ahead and even immediately eat it after Shabbat. We need to understand there are 3 scenarios that we're going to tell you that this halacha applies to. So let's put it, you have really 4 scenarios. So let's put it like this. We have 2 scenarios which is by accident. And we have 2 scenarios which are by purpose. So if a person, let's say Reuven, cooked by accident Shabbat food, we're going to say Reuven is not allowed to eat it and his whole family is not allowed to eat it. But after Shabbat, Reuven is allowed to eat it and his whole family is allowed to eat it. This is the 2 first cases we want to see over here. When it says "U'b'makom shimutar le'chol et atavshil achar Shabbat," in a situation where it is permissible for one to eat the food after Shabbat, is going on this case with Reuven and his family. However, you also have another case where it's done intentional, by purpose. Let's say Shimon and his family. Shimon went ahead and he cooked food on Shabbat intentionally. Knowingly that it's not allowed, he went ahead and he still cooked on Shabbat. The law is going to say that Shimon is not allowed to benefit from that food on Shabbat, nor can his family benefit from that food on Shabbat. However, after Shabbat there is an exception. After Shabbat we're going to say the family is able to benefit from the food. However, Shimon himself is not allowed to benefit. So we see over here you have 2 cases where it's done, meaning Reuven and his family, and you have Shimon and his family. Reuven and his family is the accident case. After Shabbat they're allowed to eat. Shimon and his family is the intentional case. After Shabbat only his family is allowed to eat, but he himself is not allowed to eat. That's what Rav David Yosef Shlita is telling us over here. In a situation where you are allowed to go ahead and eat the food after Shabbat, which in our case is Reuven and his family, and Shimon's family, but not Shimon himself. In those 3 cases, comes Rav David Yosef Shlita and he tells us, Yesh lahakel le'ochlo afilu miyad la'achar tzet Shabbat. You're allowed to be lenient and eat it even immediately after Shabbat came out. Now, Rabotai, this halacha might not catch your attention because there's something else you have to know before we do continue. There is a halacha which states b'kadesh yasu right over here, right there. B'kadesh yasu. Now, what does b'kadesh yasu mean? I'm going to tell you outside and then I'll read it for you in English. B'kadesh yasu means like this. If let's say I went on Shabbat Chas v'Shalom, I went and I cooked food. Let's say it takes me 1.5 hours to go ahead and cook this food. Let's say Rabotai was making bachs, I don't know, or chulin, whatever it was. Now, really, what should have been the punishment for Chas v'Shalom for me if I did it, let's say by accident or even intentional, or even for other people that they're not allowed to benefit on Shabbat, but even after Shabbat when we say that they are allowed to benefit, what really should have been the penalty We should have said like this, 1 second. How long did it take you to make the food? An hour and a half? Good. Wait that time, the amount of time that it takes you to make that food, and after then you can have the food. At least that's what we should have said. But comes Rav David Yosef Shlitan, he says, Yesh la'akel. You're allowed to be lenient. You don't have to wait the amount of time that it takes you to make that food on Shabbat. Which means to say, let's say if a mother went ahead and she by accident cooked a chulin, or she made, she made some type of food which took 2 hours to make on Shabbat. Doesn't matter whether or not by purpose or by accident, doesn't matter. Really, I should have said that after Shabbat for the whole family, let's just stick to that. When should it have been permissible for them? At least the amount of time that it takes the mother to make the food, 2 hours. So if Shabbat comes out at 9 o'clock p.m., they should have waited till 11 p.m. to penalize them. Comes Rav David, he says, no need. Yes, Lakel, you can be lenient. Yes, you're right. It could have taken the mother 10 hours to do the food. She could have been cooking all Shabbat long. Doesn't matter. When we're dealing with other people, they are able to go ahead and eat from that food immediately after Shabbat. Now that's specifically if she did it intentional, by purpose. But if it's by accident, not only can the family eat it immediately after Shabbat, even the mother herself could go ahead and eat it immediately after Shabbat. Now let me just show you what Kideshi Yasu is so you guys have it even more better. I think it was clear, but again, Rabotai, one thing when it comes to learning Torah, you want to be able to see the words inside. Let me see here. Okay, here we go. This is the word right here, Kideshi Yasu. Long enough for it to be made. Which means to say, you must wait the amount of time it would take to do that work after Shabbat. This is called Kideshi Yasu. That's it. That's what it means Kideshi Yasu. I would have thought at least let's give everybody the penalty of Kideshi Yasu, because remember she cooked on Shabbat. Nevertheless, comes Rav David Yosef Shultan, he says Yesh Lakel. Again, when you see over the language Yesh Lakel, if you guys can pay attention, I did highlight this blue, right? What's mutar is blue, Yesh Lakel is blue. What is asur is red, right? The blue is like the ocean flows, you're allowed to do it, don't worry. But I just want to make something clear. Whenever you have the lashonot, the expression or the languages that are used in halakha, yesh lahakel, right? Yesh lahachmir. Two things you can say. They're either telling you can be lenient, which that's the way we understand it. But there's also another way. When it says you can be lenient, that means there are other opinions that are strict, that would tell you not to eat it, k'dei shiyasu, meaning until you wait the amount of time that it takes you to go ahead and make that food. Meaning after Shabbat, you shouldn't eat it immediately, you should wait until 11 o'clock, let's say. That, Rabotai, is why you have to be very careful when you're learning halakha. When it says yesh lakel, it says you are allowed to be lenient. But if you don't want to be lenient, if you want to be concerned with other opinions that are stringent, no problem, you can go ahead and do like them. You could wait the amount of time that it takes the mother to cook the food on Shabbat, wait that amount of time after Shabbat, and beautiful, then you're able to go ahead and eat the food at 11 o'clock. It's not a problem. You want to be stringent, you can be stringent, but we see over here, you do have a leniency. Just as a side note, I want to just share with you something. I want to just show you something. This is why, you know, my Rabbi, Baruch Hashem, Rabbi Moshe Walkenstein, he should have a Riches Yom and Riches Shanim. This is why he always taught me you should want to learn things in Hebrew, in Lashon HaKodesh. Why? Because pay attention, look, the word Kideshi Yasu, look how much you have to write in English. Rabotai, this is 2 words in Hebrew. What is it? 20 words, 25 words in English. This is why Lashon HaKodesh is very important to know. Okay. So let's go back to the halakha. Let's read it one more time and we'll continue from there. Now we know this already, so we're going to say it very quick. If somebody can help me how to do these things, you know, I'm not tech savvy, so I'm really trying to do my best over here. Okay, in a place, in a situation where it is permissible for one to eat the food after Shabbat, we're going to tell you, you're allowed to be lenient and eat the food even immediately after Shabbat has come out. Pay close attention. The language says, yesh lakel, you are allowed to be lenient. But if you want to be stringent and you want to wait, the amount of time that it took the mother to make the food, that you're allowed to do. Continues Rav David Yosef Shlita. Let's move on to the next halakha. Ve'amnam, however, Rabotai, listen, this is nuts. This is beautiful. Ve'amnam, however, le'inyan goy she'asa malacha le'tzorech Yehudi b'Shabbat. Regarding a goy that went out of his way, and he did malacha for a Jew. I shouldn't say out of his way. That's extra, I just said it. However, when it comes to a goy that did forbidden malacha for the need or for the sake of the Jew on Shabbat, here we go. You guys won't believe this halakha. Hichmiru chachamim, the rabbis were stringent. They told you it is forbidden for you to get any enjoyment from that malacha until the time of b'kedei sheyasu is going to pass. You're not allowed to benefit from that malacha. What does that mean? What does b'kedei sheyasu mean? So Rav David Yosef Shlita explains, Dahainu, which means to say, Sheya'avor zman b'moti Shabbat, that you have to allow time to pass after Shabbat, ki shi'ur zman asiyat malachazu, the amount of time that it took to do this malacha. U'kemuvu'ar b'shulchan aruch siman shin chav hei seif vav, like this is brought down in the Shulchan Aruch in siman shin chav hei in halacha vav. Comes Rav David Yosef Shlita and he says something fascinating. Let's say you have Sarah, a Jew, who went ahead and she, by accident, cooked the food on Shabbat, or even by purpose, doesn't matter. After Shabbat, if it was done by accident, she can benefit from the food after Shabbat immediately, and so to the family. But if she did it by purpose, she could never eat from the food after Shabbat forever. Her family is able to benefit immediately. That's by Sarah. But let's say if you had, I don't know, Christina or Jennifer, I don't know. Let's say Jennifer. Jennifer is your housemaid. She went ahead and she cooked for you food on Shabbat. Come the Chachamim, they say you're not allowed to benefit from that food on Shabbat. Nobody's allowed to benefit. But after Shabbat, you have to ask Jennifer, how long did it take you to cook that food on Shabbat? She's going to tell you, 3 hours. You have to wait 3 hours. That is the penalty that the Chachamim gave us. They were stringent more with the non-Jew than with the Jew. Continues Rav David Yosef Shlita, and that's something nice, no? By the Jew, we're lenient. By the Goy, we're more machmir. Okay. Nevertheless, when it comes to a Jew that is doing the malacha on Shabbat, the Chachamim were not stringent in this. Vehitiru, and they allowed lehonot, to get benefit me'ota malacha, from that work, miyad, immediately la'achar tzet Shabbat, immediately after Shabbat has come out. Okay, Rabotai, this is the halacha for today. We're going to move on to the English. I'm just going to read the English for those that want to see the English. And from there we're going to conclude B'ezrat Hashem. If there is a situation where it is allowed to eat the cooked food after Shabbat, we explained the 3 cases, then you are allowed to eat it right away after Shabbat ends. But there is a difference when the one who did the work on Shabbat was a non-Jew. If a non-Jew did some malacha on Shabbat for a Jew, the rabbis were strict and said you cannot use or enjoy what he did right away after Shabbat. You must wait the amount of time it would take to do that work after Shabbat. This is called Kedei Sheyasu, long enough for it to be made. This rule is in the Shulchan Aruch in Siman 3-5 in Halacha 6. But if a Jew himself broke Shabbat and did the work, the rabbis were not strict in this case. They allowed you to benefit from what was done right away as soon as Shabbat ends. Okay, Rabotai, have a great day. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.